How's it going, everybody? So here I am today with my take on the loop OTK. Unlike everyone else, I actually call mine Retainer Loop. So some people at locals have seen me play this deck before. I was considering kind of waiting on this. I was actually considering it for a future event myself, and I wanted people to have as little knowledge or experience of what my version of the deck would do as possible, but I don't think this deck is completely viable, and I want to see if someone else can take the work that I've put into the list and actually manage to break the deck. So this is Steve D, which Steve D based his list on the great Chris Matisky in Australia. And I think this list is really clean. Like, a lot of 3-ofs, you're very likely to be able to get the combo off if you go in uninterrupted, but that's kind of the problem. I don't think you're going to go uninterrupted. If a smart opponent holds a single Brunhilde for the Ico and you don't have a Mist Dragon or a Ku Sith, your loop is over and you're probably dead. On top of that, there's no defense in this list. You have the 1 Titan, the 1 copy of Hecaton Shear, 3 Typhon, and 2 Dryads. Your 13 opponents will run all over you. I guess you have the 3 Shantoto as well, but again, you're going so minus to stop 13 with this list that you're never getting to the loop and you're probably dead before it resolves anyway. So I wanted to try to find a version of this that tried to solve all of the outstanding issues with this list and try to make it as... I had 3 goals. I wanted to, number 1, make it consistent. Number 2, I wanted to make it powerful. But 3, I wanted, power was, it wins you the game. Power isn't the right word. Resilient is the right one. I wanted it to be able to play through interruption and deal with anything my opponent's trying to do, right? And 3, I wanted it to have backup game plans. It needed to be able to win without executing the loop, because the loop wasn't always going to be possible. And I think this version of the list is so all in on the loop. Like, sure, you can maybe play a mid-range game with Zidane and Ico and all that, but I don't consider that to be a really viable way to play the game, right? So I wanted to go over kind of the changes that I made and the direction I took the list. I think this was a really nice starting place, though. Again, you see 3-ofs everywhere. This deck is extremely consistent and very powerful. This is my version. You'll notice that I've gone quite a few different things in different places. So let's go ahead and get right into it. If you haven't seen before, essentially what happens is that between Valifor and Tilica and Braska, it's possible to execute a loop where you go plus on CP every turn, and then as long as you have an outlet for that CP that ends up removing a card from your opponent's deck, you can win the game on the spot. And it's got much easier with the printing of Rydia, Garnet, and Ico. Ico allows you to cast the Valifor, which is the only way to get all the forwards on your side of the field back to your hand, which allows you to repeat the loop again. This setup requires 5 backups. An Ico, a Garnet, a Yuna, and either a Cerberus or a Sophie. It could work with Lulu Diabolos, but I opted to not include that as an option. And any combination of those cards will end up executing an infinite loop, at which point you can probably win the game right there. So we have 3-ofs of all the really important cards for the loop. 3 Ico, 3 Garnet, 2 Yuna, because Yuna, Sophie, and Cerberus are all interchangeable. And then also 2 Lulus, which are also extra copies of Yuna in a way. Lulu also can theoretically replace Garnet, I think, if you have a Yuna in rotation as well. But again, I try to get as much resilience as possible, where if my opponent interrupted me, I still had ways of dealing with it. You know, if I had my breaks on Mist Dragon and lost access to a lot of my key pieces, I could still do parts of the loop. I did cut down to just 2 of the 2 costs a day, and you only need access to the 1 to win the game. And I went for 1 copy of the 3 costs a day, and this allows you to hand loop your opponent, rip every card out of their hand so you know that you're safe to go for the Ico loop. You could bounce your opponent's entire field to their hand, and then Zidane loop their entire hand out of them, and before you proceed to the combo where you mill them. Just a way of being safe, essentially. I bumped to a second Kusith, again just trying to recover these pieces, so if I pitch them early, it's not the end of the game. Backup count went down from 20 to 18. I added 1 copy of Braska, which actually ends up coming up a lot. You can go Rydia, search Braska and Valifor, and it gives you access to a backup as soon as you draw a Garnet or you have a Tyro or a Shantoto down in order to cast the Braska. And if not, he's just decent pitch fodder. It's also possible to do the entire loop with just Braska and not Tilica. 2 copies of Philo. We need the water CP for the Garnet somewhere. Let's see, 3 copies of Shantoto, trying to deal with 13, give ourselves our access to our rainbow colors. 2 copies of Tyro. Deck list was extremely tight. I had to find cuts somewhere. Tyro ended up being a little slow in some game states. 3 Northstall and a search are 2 copies of Tilica, or our 2 copies of Fiona. Fiona is incredibly powerful in this list. This is maybe my favorite card in the entire game. I wish I could find it better. There's something about Fiona in Earthwind specifically that she just works in, that she doesn't work in any other variant of Wind. But in an Earthwind list, this card just absolutely will win games for you. Other than that, the backups, like I said, they're trimmed down a little bit, trying to make room for some of the defensive tools. I was really scared of 13 in playtesting against 13. It's very easy to goldfish 13, which is nice. So the other big change I made was Noctis, 3 Noctis, 2 Prompto, and 2 Gladiolus. This gives you a really nice defensive backbone against 13. Gladiolus is a very difficult card for that deck to remove. He costs you 2 CP, and Lightning can never swing into him, essentially. If you have a Gladiolus on field, Lightning, even with, like, if it's like Fang, Vanille, Lightning, she still never gets above him if he's at damage 3. Which, if you're against 13, you probably will be. So not only can you go, like, your opponent can go Vanille Hope, you can respond with Noctis Gladio, kill the Vanille. All of a sudden now they're down a forward, and you have the biggest forward on the field. And it's no longer safe for them to swing Lightning unless they get extremely lucky and they have to find a way to remove the Gladio, right? It kind of functions as a 2 CPU warrior of Lighted Home, essentially, in this list. The 1 Titan Lord of Crags, this deals with 13 if they're not on, if Fang hasn't hit the field yet. The one other major change that I made was I realized that I thought Ice Earth was going to be one of the top decks in the metagame. And I needed to find room to deal with monsters, because if your opponent's on Ice Earth and they ever play a Scale Toad, you lose the game on the traditional list that Steve D has. It is impossible to ever get your hand size large enough to actively get the loop online. And you can't push damage through because you're on... Like, you go, oh, well, you can swing Zidane. It's like, no, you can't, because they can Arcanist it. And you can't keep your hand size up enough to get your Fiona searches to actually resolve the combo. One thing I cut that might surprise a lot of people is I'm on no copies of Luso. Luso, the idea with Luso in the normal list is that Luso allows you to draw your entire deck, right? And because you can draw your entire deck, you can always find your Zidane when you need him. As long as you get to where you have the basic combo online. I opted to not do that because I found that it actually wasn't necessary. Believe it or not, there are actually ways around that. The biggest ones being Lulu and Prompto, actually. Prompto allows you to search every single Retainer and Noctis that remains in your deck. Get them all out of the deck, at which point you can Fiona them away for the actual combo piece you need. Same thing for Lulu. You have 8 summons in the break zone. You only need Valifor. So you just kind of keep looping to get all the summons in your break zone back to hand, and then you Fiona them away to find the card you actually need. I found that, in theory, you can get the cast 7 Luso trigger off, but if you're casting 7 cards, you've probably resolved Valifor and put them all back in your opponent's hand anyway. So who cares at that point, right? Like it seemed like it just wasn't going to come up in a way that Lulu and Prompto didn't already cover. And you'll see that I swapped one of my copies of Cerberus for another copy of Sophie as well. Essentially, between the Sophie and the Alexander, I was not going to lose to Scale Toad. I refused to allow it. I also think Sophie's just kind of a neat card in general. She pairs very well with Noctis. You can go play Noctis, play Sophie, activate all backups, gain 2,000 power, even 9,000 power punch, and all of your backups back up for free so you can continue to combo off. Just ends up being kind of a neat little one-of in a list that is really trying to find and squeeze as much utility out of its cards as it can, because there's so much space in here taken up by the OTK loop that it's very hard for this deck to have room for anything else. So this is the list that I have. I'm going to put this in the description if people want to dabble with this, try to improve it. I'd love to try to get to an extra copy of Hecaton Shear, or like 2 Mist Dragons. I just don't know what I'd cut for it. Maybe you can go to like 3 Hecaton Shear, 2 Mist Dragon, 3 Kusith, and cut the retainers entirely. Go to like 3 Lulu, 2 Sophie, 3 Cerberus. Looking back on it, but maybe you can go to like Diabolos to handle 13. I don't know. This definitely feels like there's probably something there that would work. Let me go ahead, let me go load up the play this deck option in. Let me show you guys how it works. So let's say we have a Philo, a Shantoto, a Tilica on the field, let's throw a Fiona down, and a Norshdalen. Seems like a pretty decent common backup line. We're going to say that we have probably have resolved a Rydia, actually. And I like Rydia better. I'm going to put Rydia in over the Fiona. Really you need, I think it's 3 backups that generate wind total, and 1 backup that generates water, which this backup line does. I think any backup line will do it. You need a copy of Ico. I'm going to showcase this with a way to get to the Zidane, and I'll assume the Zidane happens later. So we're going to leave the Zidane in deck. Let's get a Lulu. Let's get a copy of Cerberus. I need a Yuna, a Cerberus, and I need a Garnet with... I'm just going to throw a bunch of summons in the break zone here real quick. We've searched a couple of Valifors over the course of the game. There's an Alexander in there as well. Oh, geesh. I think that should be enough summons. Let's throw a Kusith in as well for good measure if I can find one real quick. They're both in hand, aren't they? Yeah, okay, cool. Perfect. I know this seems like a pretty specific combo, but it's pretty easy to keep. The Cerberus can be on field at the start of this. That doesn't actually cause a problem. I'm going to say that we did at a previous turn. We keep the Ico and the Lulu in hand, and the Cerberus is already on field. So let's go ahead and try to get this loop with this. So we're going to go Tilica effect to start. I'm going to go Water and Earth we're going to go Earth for Ico. We're going to go 3 for our Yuna, which activates our backups. We're going to go Earth and Water for our Garnet, who is going to add back our Valifor from our break zone to our hand. We're going to tap our 3 summoners to cast the Valifor. All these go back to hand. We're going to go Ico for 1. 2 for the Cerberus. You do need to practice this combo. It's very easy to solitaire, which is nice. Cerberus activates all of our backups. Earth and Water for the Garnet. Get back the Valifor. We're going to go 3 for Yuna. Yuna's going to activate our backups. And we're going to go ahead and cast the Valifor. So this is great because this gets us to what we're going to call Action 0, which is we have an active Tilica. We have all the combo pieces that we need in hand. And we have something worth looping, which in this case is going to be Lulu, right? So we're going to go ahead, we're going to do another loop. We're going to go Ico. We're going to go Garnet. We're going to go 2 for the Cerberus. Activate all of these. The Garnet also gets back the Valifor. So now we're going to go 2 for the Lulu. Lulu is going to add back a summon. We're going to go 3 for the Yuna. and then we're going to go tap our 3 summoners, and we're going to cast the Valifor, and we're going to get all these back to hand again. And you'll notice we're right back where we were. We have all of our backups active. We have our 5 important forwards in hand. And we added an extra summon from our break zone to our hand. That's going to be relevant. So we repeat this again. So we're going to go Ico, Garnet, get back the Valifor. We're going to go 2 for the Cerberus, which activates our backups again. We're going to go 2 for the Lulu. We're going to add the Kusith. And then we're going to go 3 for the Yuna. And then we're going to go Valifor using the Ico ability, which adds all of these back to hand. You make the Cerberus a forward on the stack. And you see we're increasing our hand size steadily. So if we repeat this loop a bunch, we end up with all of the summons in our break zone in our hand, except for 1 copy of Valifor, right? So now I need to convert these into something that lets me win the game. You can do this with Lulu getting back your summons. You can do this with Prompto getting the other retainers out of the deck that still are in there. You just need some way to increase your hand size. So we're going to do the same thing here, but we're going to go 1 for Ico. We're going to go 2 for Garnet. We're going to get back the Valifor. And then we're going to go 2 for Cerberus, which reactivates all of the backups. So here's where things are going to deviate a little bit. We don't need our Lulu anymore. So we're going to go Fiona effect. We're going to discard a Valifor and a Mist Dragon. And we're going to go fetch the missing piece, which is, in this case, the Zidane. At this point, we know that our opponent probably doesn't have an interruption, but you could, in theory, get the 3 CP Zidane here to hand rip your opponent. But we don't really need to do that because we've done the loop a bunch already. We can go 1 for this Zidane. We steal the card at the top card of our opponent's deck, play the Yuna, and we're good to go. We cast a Valifor. All these go back to hand. And we now repeat the loop using the Zidane instead of the Lulu. And yeah, that's pretty much how it works. There's a way of doing this with no Tilica if you have a Braska down, which is one of those things you kind of just have to solitaire out. A lot of the times you'll have a couple extra cards in hand when you Valifor. That'll let you Fiona for your missing piece. For example, it's like not impossible for you to like kind of be sitting on like a Noctis and a Gladio on field, and then you Fiona everything back to hand, and then you Valifor everything back to hand, and then you Fiona them away to get like a Yuna, so that you can like actually start to plus on CP that isn't just cards sitting on field. It's something you have to practice, spend some time with, but it is very fun to solitaire. If anybody has any suggestions or improvements for this deck, I would love to see them. But as it is, I think this version of the deck is solid. It's just a combination of very hard to pilot and really is poorly positioned against a lot of the metagame. I think that one of the biggest changes with this Opus has actually been that setup decks are starting to fear having backups broken. Tilica and Braska, for instance, are very scared of Une in particular. And then also dealing with something like Warrior of Light, your only real option is Noctis into Gladio. You just don't have an easy way of dealing a 10k damage to something, right? I cut the Typhons from this list just because I found that Typhon against 13 doesn't actually answer the board state. You can Valifor the Warrior of Light, but if you don't get the loop off that turn, it feels really, really bad. Warrior of Light also by itself says that Ico can't exist on the field because they can just tap it, kill the Ico on the stack of casting the Valifor, at which point you've probably lost the game. Like, it feels like this deck needs about 54 cards before I'd really consider it. Like, I'm just running into space issues, really. The deck is a lot of fun. I highly recommend giving it a go. Definitely fun to surprise your friends with. I remember the first time I pulled this off at a locals, my friends were like, "What the heck are you doing, Ghoul?" And I'm like, "Hold on, I'm getting there." So, yeah, let me know what y'all think.